Welcome back. There's mounting concern about security in Afghanistan as news of Taliban activity increases. Last week, according to the Russian government, the Islamist terror group had already taken hold of two-thirds of the country and that the situation in the country can swiftly worsen, promising to help if needed. Afghans are concerned about their security as well. The security forces fled an encounter with the Taliban, fleeing into Turkmenistan at some point during the week. While concern rises, U.S. President Joe Biden says it's up to Afghans to run their country as the last of U.S. troops there leave on August 31st.
We did not go to Afghanistan to nation build. And it's the right and the responsibility of the Afghan people alone to decide their future and how they want to run their country.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says most British troops have been pulled out of Afghanistan as well. The Taliban says it has taken control of 85% of territory in Afghanistan, though the Afghan government denies this. The Taliban also assured that territory will never be used by any third party again. U.S. Army veteran and geopolitical analyst Major Adebayo Adeleke joins us now from Dallas, Texas. Thank you for joining us on the program, Major Adeleke.
Thank you so much, Amarachi. Thank you for having me.
President Biden says U.S. troops did not go into Afghanistan to nation build. Now, if that's the case, why stay for almost 20 years?
So, I come to understand where the president is coming from. Initially, we went to Afghanistan to get Osama bin Laden, which years later we finally did in Pakistan. And initially, that wasn't the intent for nation building. It was there to suppress the terrorist activity and then get out of the country. As often in most of major U.S. conflict, we'll go in there, we'll do the mission, we capture the objective, and then we turn it over to the people. But unfortunately, Afghanistan has proven difficult in a sense that it was difficult to actually ramp up folks within the country to actually take over the country from them, because as you know, Taliban has pretty much at the helm of their affairs for years before we got in there. So that has been the reason why. So if we put at it the way the president puts it, initially, yes, we weren't there to do nation building, but it turns out that that's what we're doing over there. And unfortunately, it is what it is. As you know, my previous conversations with you, I spent about 4 deployments in Afghanistan. Actually, most of my adult life I spent in there from 2006 to 2011. So I'm quite familiar with the terrain and how difficult it is over there to train up both the police and the Afghan National Army. So I completely understand, and that's one of the major reasons why it's very, very difficult right now to actually get this thing going, and why the Taliban are actually advancing rapidly across the nation, because they have something that's going on for them. They have the fear, and the fear of the people. People fear the Taliban. They've heard the story over the course of time. And it's going to be quite interesting to see how the Afghan national military is going to actually fend off or kind of defend the remaining part of the country.
So the U.S. Says that they have trained those Afghan forces up until the point where they can stand alone. But even the Afghan people have no confidence in their military, and the military themselves have no confidence in themselves. There were reports last week of some Afghan soldiers handing over their weapons to the Taliban, who now claim that they have taken over 85% of Afghanistan. Do you have any confidence that the Afghan forces can stand up to the Taliban?
I believe if they want to, they can. Actually, we've trained with the best of them. Myself, I've trained with some of them. I've trained them. I've supported them in training, and we've gone into firefight with some of them, and they've held their own. So, from my first-hand experience with them, I believe that any formidable force, they can actually stand their ground. But now, like I said earlier, the fear of the Taliban, I think in this case, the beginning of wisdom for the military. And I think for their commanders, they have to kind of restitute within those soldiers, within the rank and file, that this is what they've been waiting for, this is what they've trained for, and be able to hold their ground.
Yeah, and I just want to point out that President Joe Biden is not the only U.S. president who's called for the withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan. President Obama also mentioned it. President Donald Trump also did. He in fact set the ball rolling with the withdrawal. But I know that we also once talked about the lessons that can be learned from Afghanistan and the fight against the Taliban. we did talk about, we were drawing, similarities as well as differences between the war in Afghanistan and Nigeria's war against insurgency. Do you think that those lessons still apply now, given, the recent developments?
Absolutely. Actually, we can go far back as the U.S. withdrawal in Saigon as well. The same thing applies. Is the fact of the matter is when you fight a war in a different territory, the social cultural element still remains the same. Regardless of wherever you go, let's go back into World War II when U.S. occupied Japan for a few years, and after that, it turned over, and the Japanese actually took over their government and drove their government the way they wanted.
The situation in Afghanistan, a lot of people are afraid that as soon as the last foreign troops leave, I mean, the British say almost all their troops are leaving. Other allied forces are also pulling out of Afghanistan. Do you think that you also have the fear that as soon as, the last of the forces leave, that the Taliban will take over? Because I know that when Osama bin Laden was killed, one of the comments that were made during that time for analysts here in Nigeria was that the Taliban was an ideology. Killing Osama bin Laden will not stop that. And if you compare that with Nigeria, also the leader of Boko Haram has been killed or was killed himself. Don't know, but he's dead. And the ideology still continues. So the Taliban is an ideology, even though it's an ideology dwelling in the midst of a group of people who have weapons, who have created this atmosphere of this aura of fear around them. Do you think that they could also run over Afghanistan? And when you compare that with Nigeria, do you think also that the insurgents could eventually, reach all parts of the country?
Ideology cannot be completely eradicated. As you can see, we still have some people still holding on to a lot of ideology that has go back as far back as 1800s. This thing can be passed down from generation to generation. As we see in the issue of Taliban right now, once the ideology take a root, it's very, very difficult for you to actually be uprooted militarily. It takes a lot of desensitizing, a lot of more or less of cultural sessions cultural sensing sessions to be able to cleanse some of these things out. Even with that, it's going to be extremely difficult. And my fear is some of the advances, some of the great work that we've done over the last 20 years is going to be eroded. And I believe I shared a couple of pictures with you of my time in Afghanistan as a commander. In both Wodak and Logar province of Afghanistan, when I had female engagement teams actually engaging the population over there, teaching the girl's child out, to go to school, something that wasn't obtainable during the Taliban era. And you can see those pictures tells you a lot of how far Afghanistan has come. Imagine having a girl's child doesn't have the opportunity to go to school. That is what Afghan will result to if Taliban actually takes over. So I understand the president has to look at it from a strategic and a macro level. But for some of us that were on ground, boots on ground, touching the hearts and mind of the people in the best way we can by teaching them, building bridges. We understand how far the country has gone. And to be honest with you, with the work we've done over there, nothing can take it away from us because, a lot of us lost a lot of loved ones. We bled on that. On that soil, and we made a lot of considerable effort. As you can see in some of those, I still have contact with some of my Afghan interpreters that work with me over there. A lot of them has relocated back to into the United States right now for better opportunity.
Let's talk about that a bit because yes, there is talk about those interpreters, those who have helped the U.S. Army, the U.S. troops in Afghanistan, the interpreters, drivers, and so on. They're supposed to get special visas to enable them relocate to the United States because where they are endangered species. If the Taliban does get hold of them,
Absolutely.
they're all dead. So,
Yeah.
what do you make of the seeming delay, to their special visas? I mean, it doesn't really seem like the U.S. government is really committed, to getting them those visas in time.
I believe they are. I believe they are Marachi because I know at least of two interpreters that I know that I work closely with that have relocated, and I know a lot of them have actually. But the issue about the interpreters getting visas, the fact of the matter is you have to state how deep you work with the U.S. government, which company you work with them. So, for example, at last time I was in Afghanistan was in 2011, and where every interpreter that work with me has to contact me, and I have to vouch for their character. I have to vouch for things they did for my organization. And oftentimes, as military, we move every 2 to 3 years, and oftentimes they might not be able to get me if they don't have my personal email. So it's quite difficult for them to validate if you work for the U.S. government or not. Though they have a TERPS company that can, that can vouch for them, but you still need a letter of recommendations for people you work for.
This is where we end the program this week. Don't forget to watch reruns all week on Channels Television and on channelstv.com. I'm Amarachi Ubani. I'll see you next time.